Okay, I guess, yes, we are live. Hi, good morning, guys. Cat is about 5 days away, 4 days away, and we have with us the first Bengali superhero, Hoodie Baba. That's what Rahul told me just as he entered over here.
Hoodie Baba.
So Hoodie Baba. So Rahul is actually chilling out just before the CAT examination with his parents. This session was supposed to be done a little later, but then he has a party in the evening. So we will speak about party a little later. But Rahul is also the defending champion. I mean, he has like a VARC 100 percentiler. So he's actually going to go and trying to defend his crown. So are you going to do some sort of like a psych your competitors like Muhammad Ali and say that, some trash talking which you're required to do before you do that?
Somehow I hardly know other VARC 100 percentilers. The LRDA and the Quant 100 percentilers are more well known. So yeah, in that sense, yes. But
Okay. Okay, so let's start with what we are looking at in CAT this year. So last year VARC was extremely difficult, or at least people found it very difficult. So do you think it can go more difficult than that, or can it become easier? I mean, you were complaining about me a few days back that these, I mean, I will not use the word, but these guys have not even released the mock test pattern, and like there is an additional confusion
I
in
think
terms of.
yes, I would have been happier if they had at least given the idea of number of questions and the split between RC and the verbal part. See, we can always do reasonable estimates, but it would be nice to have that transparency. People need that planning in terms of what kind of time allocation. Do I attempt everything, or do I leave one RC? Do I leave the parajumbles? That kind of planning is easier if there, right? See, people who are very good, it doesn't matter. They probably attempt everything anyway in the VRC, but that's not most students. For most students, you would rather have an idea of what kind of attempts I need to do and how many I need to leave. So that would have been helpful. It's not a major, deal breaker kind of a thing. And we always say that, look, the playing field is level for everybody. So it's not that you alone do not know. Nobody knows in that sense. So a little bit of flexibility you should keep. So if it is 24, how would I handle it? If it is, say, 28 questions, then how would I handle it? That flexibility. See, coming to the difficulty part, see, let us understand that 2018 or even 17 for that matter was a little skewed in terms of RCVA's scores for the same percentile were much higher than LRDI and a bit higher than Quant also. So that has leveled a little bit. 2019, if you see, the score required for the same percentile for VA and Quant are almost on par. LRDI is still a little lower, though the gap has narrowed. LRDI used to be almost half of what you would get in VARC, but that
I think people have gotten used to the difficulty of LRDI, or at least they've gotten numb to the thing. And I think CAT has also reduced the difficulty a little bit. I mean, honestly speaking, 2017 and some people also say 16. 17 was ridiculous in terms of the size of the data which was given, etc. 2018 was slightly easier, and 2019 was probably what a generic LRDI paper would be. We have seen gradual increase in scores.
Now it is more or less, look, each section is probably going towards a
mean
R kind of a score. Hopefully that's what the IIMs are doing. Then you would probably say that we might stay with the same level of difficulty in Quant and RC, probably even a little easier again in LRDI, maybe even a little easier than 19 would make it properly par. Right? I'm not saying it will happen, but that would be the ideal case.
Okay.
Now,
so VARC you think is going to be roughly the same?
I would say roughly 2019. And again, probably I would not say 2019 is, let's say, extremely difficult. I think there was one passage which was probably the colonial enlightenment kind of passage, which, see, when you get one passage which is like off the charts, you tend to assume that the entire paper was tough. The other parts were not that tough in that sense.
Okay.
And parajumble continues to remain tough. Even reducing from 5 to 4 didn't make much of a difference. 4 sentences is still 24 different possibilities. So,
And without any options, it makes it like a ridiculously
exactly.
odd
So
sort of a.
it's a small thing that all students should realize, that for every question which has an answer choice, you have a 1 in 4 chance of, randomly getting it correct. And every answer you eliminate, your chances are improving significantly. Unfortunately, for parajumbles, there are 24 possibilities. Now, even if you look at, let us say, odd one out, it's 1 in 5, right? And both are theta questions. So there are no negative in odd parajumble also, but it's 1 in 5. Summary is 1 in 4, and parajumble is 1 in 24. And most people, if they look at their mock scores and look at accuracy, I've seen very good students get 30% accuracy in parajumbles. Now, if that is where you are, then think about, if you have to leave questions, then parajumbles are probably the ones that you should leave. If you can attempt everything, that's fine. But if you're short
I
of
mean,
time,
it's a theta question. I mean, assuming it still is a theta question, there is no point leaving a parajumble, right?
you
I mean,
leave it if there is no time.
obviously, you can probably spend yeah.
Yeah, only there is no time. If you have time to attempt everything, yeah, nothing like it. But if you don't have time, rather than leave anything else, leaving parajumble probably makes a little more sense. So that's the key here.
Okay. Any chance that grammar, sentence correction, fill in the blanks, etc., will
Unlikely.
make a comeback?
Obviously, there is. We can never say it is zero, but it seems to be the trend that
Okay.
the focus is on understanding rather than technicalities of grammar. So that seems to be the trend that we are looking at.
So you have been giving CAT regularly for almost, I mean, more than 15 years now. I mean, one thing which a lot of people want to figure out is there like a theme to their passages or para summaries or paragraphs? Like every year you might have probably something which has to do with, current affairs. I know ZAT definitely does it. I mean, their business cases usually have like a theme, right? So for example, when the Jet Airways fiasco was going on, there was a case on Jet Airways. When all those Baba Kants were going on, there was a case on Guruji's advice and all those things. So have you seen something like in CAT also? We might see a coronavirus or a work from home theme this year.
Right. See, my analysis of, let's say, recent CAT papers, first thing that stands out is there is hardly any India content in terms of Indian news sources as such, right? I think in the last 6 papers, which is 3 years, we take about, let's say, 50 or 40 odd passages. There's been one, which is again Forbes India. So again, I'm not sure whether it's original Forbes India or was it a Forbes published
Article published, syndicated for board.
yeah, syndicated to India. So content-wise, I think they've been staying off Indian content. Again, there is the only plausible reason for it is they don't want to give a passage which people have already read, giving them an advantage. So that's why they're staying off Indian content. But the problem that happens is once you pick foreign content, then the cover is also going to be more foreign origin. They may not cover very India specific news. Second thing they've done is
American elections this year.
probably. So, but again, partisan things they'll probably avoid. So it may not be. It may be a neutral coverage of the election process.
They source it from the Guardian. How unpartisan can you
I'm not
be?
sure that every article in NYT and Guardian is partisan. They have their own share of editorial content. They could be, for example, something like detailing the analysis of the electoral college and that kind of that how it was framed and the origin of their election process and their federal nature. That kind of stuff can happen. But okay, the second part, content, when I did the analysis, what I found, one is science and tech is a big area. And more science, less tech, which means natural sciences. And we can see the pattern, right? A lot of passages that we remember from the last few, whether it is rings of Saturn or whether it is, white-tipped grove snails in Northern Ireland. And so these are So natural sciences is a broad area. It can be from geography to astronomy to any of these areas. But one theme we probably expect is something connected to climate change. For the sheer number of articles, if you see
They
science
publish, yeah.
articles, about 30-40% of them are dealing with climate change. So that definitely is a theme that matters. Second is, of course, business and economy. So trends in business and economy kind of. So work from home definitely, but it could be a business perspective. So what are the impacts that will have on the industry, or something like productivity, how people cope.
Yeah, or all jobs capable of being worked from home. And
Absolutely. And how does it affect the productivity and the way organizations are structured and that kind of stuff? So gig economy and all that kind of a thing that might come through in that sense.
okay. So let's look at some exam day strategies. So there are a couple of things which are there. First is the mask, right? Obviously, people are required to spend that 2 hours inside a mask. We got a couple of questions asking like, can I not wear a mask? And second is, I have glasses and my masks, and I mean, my glasses end up getting fogged up and stuff like that. What do you think is, I mean, is mask going to be mandatory? Are
Amongst
gloves mandatory?
gloves will probably not be mandatory. See, one thing that I have a little bit of an experience in the sense that I have recently taken the CLAT exam, CLAT 21 exam. Now, sorry, CLAT 20 exam. Now, CLAT 20 exam was conducted at TCS Ion centers.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's the same.
It's a dry run. It's a proper dry run for your final.
So their mask was compulsory, mandatory. But while taking the exam, people were, pulling the mask down. When you have that cubicle kind of a thing and you are protected in that sense, you're facing the computer, I think pulling down the mask should be okay. So make sure mask covers your nose and mouth at the time of entry, getting in, and so on. But once you're actually in front of the computer, separated from others, then I think it's okay to,
I think more than anything else, you should go home and take a shower before touching anyone else. That's about it. I mean, that's the best precaution that you can probably
take. I'm sure there
take.
will be sanitizers right outside the center. So you can sanitize your hands at least while going back. But yes, as soon as you go home, a complete change and cover will be good. I don't think specs would be an issue. And I personally do wear specs, so it should not be a problem taking the exam. Of course, when I see things which are close by, I take out the specs. So, but others may not have the same issue. But it was reasonably well conducted, the CLAT 21 exam. And I don't think there have been any real reports that it affected or increased the number of cases after it was conducted. So that's one less of a worry that we have.
Okay. Another question which I wanted to ask is usually, and this tends to happen with a lot of people who are midway in between. See, there are people who are very well prepared and there are some people who are probably not so well prepared. But the people who are on the cusp of, hitting a 90 odd percentile, 90, 92 odd percentile, these people face a lot of problem where they see the paper and there is one different thing which is available, and they suddenly think that whatever I have planned for, it should all go out of the window. And they try either being completely reckless or they become too conservative in marking the answer. How do you think? I mean, do you think it happens? And if it happens,
yes,
how do you guard against it?
It definitely happens. I think the first part is, look, you have a few minutes before the exam starts when you're reading the instructions. Right? Please don't skip or take it cursorily. Right? That is when you get the first indication if there's any change. Right? And remember, we are carrying this experience from the older CAT papers where there were a lot of surprises and shocks.
When you used to get a birthday gift on the CAT examination day.
Yeah. And it's like, sudden change in pattern. For example, suddenly you know that, look, every section divided into section 1A and 1B and 2A and 2.
Differential marking. Yeah.
With 1 mark and 2 marks. So those kind of changes are unlikely to happen now. But still, you will get a pretty good idea of any change that is happening if you read the instructions very carefully, right? See, a lot of instructions are normal, but 1 or 2 of those will stand out. So your first RC starts there, right? Read carefully, understand the instructions, the pattern changes, if any, number of questions, if any, is different will come out there. There could also be small changes which could affect how you mark. There was a controversy in CLAT, for example, which says that questions which are marked for review will not get counted. You have marked an answer and marked it for review. Mark the question for review. In CAT, the process is it gets counted. Okay, so for example, question number 3, I have marked an answer as option 2, but I've also marked the question for review saying that if I have time, I'll come back and check it. If I don't come back and submit it, then 2 is counted as an answer. CLAT said it won't get counted, and that created a bit of controversy.
That's a little odd. I mean, then what's the point of marking the answer if?
Yes, that mark for review actually becomes a dangerous thing.
Yes.
So then you have to either remove the marks for review in the last minute, and you may not have time. So it becomes
asking a younger kid like that to do that. It's a little unjustified. Yeah.
It is extreme, and no real reason why they should do that, given that it's the same format of the exam and TCSI aren't doing it. But that's just as an example to see, look, if there is any change in the marking system or the way clicks or mark for review or moving from section to section has to be used. That is where you get early warning there. That's one thing to really keep track of. The second thing is, do not react to change. Anytime you see anything that makes you worry, the first thought that should come to your mind is it's the same for everyone. And score doesn't matter, percentile does. Right? So it's like, okay, suddenly they're saying races change from 100 meters to 200 meters. It doesn't matter what your timing is. Timing will obviously change. What matters is in which order you finish. So you're going to run 100 extra meters, so is everyone. So make sure you maintain your rank.
And everyone, it's not like there are 200-meter specialists here. I mean, they're all 100 meters. They have all practiced for 100 meters. And I doubt if, I'm sorry, I doubt if there is somebody like Jim Courier used to be a player in French Open. I mean, he used to be like a king in French Open. At least he used to be really good. So he, at the end of every match, he used to play for 1 extra hour practice just to make sure that if the match lasted for 1 extra hour, he would still be available. I doubt if anyone is actually doing.
In fact, the reverse is if anybody else panics, then you actually gain a slot.
Especially if you hold your nerve, right?
Right. So that's another reason why I rarely give very rigid numbers in terms of how many attempts should be made.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really, normally we would say 15, 16 attempts in DILR might be enough. But that's based on the last 3 years pattern, which is also slightly changing. If you are able to get, for example, for whatever reason, a very easy LRDI, then 15, 16 will not suffice. You need more attempts. So that's why let's not be rigid. Let us say, look, I'm going to use my time optimally. And if the paper is tough, then let the cutoffs go down by themselves. Let the attempts go down because cutoffs also will go down. And vice versa. If the paper is easy, attempts will go up, so will the cutoffs. And then you're okay.
So, I mean, given that you said like there should be a fluid sort of a strategy, now let's extrapolate it a little bit. So, for example, you normally, I mean, most people are accustomed to taking CL time, IMS mocks, right? So say in CL mocks, you are roughly scoring about 60% of the marks and you're hitting a 97, 98 percentile consistently, right? And you're struggling to finish that paper. And on the day of the exam, you have already reached 50% of the paper and you still have 15 minutes left in a 40-minute sort of a section. How will you react to that sort of a scenario?
No, I would not assume that my performance is suddenly zoomed on one day. I'll have to assume that paper is easy. And if I have 15 minutes, let me not over worry it. Let me use it as optimally as I can. And if the attempts go up naturally, let them go up. Like, for example, this would have happened in a CAT 17 quant paper, for example.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of people who just attempted 29, 30 questions. It just so happened paper was easy, so number of attempts went up. It's a natural thing. I don't want to panic and say, maybe I am doing things wrong. Let me go back, recheck my questions and all that. Right?
Okay.
You have to have the confidence not to recheck all your calculations.
I think more than, I mean, you hit the nail completely on the head. You need to have the belief that I have prepared a lot. Obviously, I mean, it's like that polling error thing, right? I know Trump won in 2016, but because the lead that Biden has, even a swing of that magnitude helped him, which actually helped him in all those swing states. There was a polling error, but so because your lead is good enough, similarly, if you're prepared well enough, I think you should be able to not scrape through, you'll be able to get through. And it's a very unlikely chance. Obviously, 1 in a million chances do happen, but it's a very unlikely chance. Okay, so let's go now. You are a you usually take VARC the most, seriously. Once you are done with that paper, you basically are very dispassionate about the other two sections. So what do you do in the other two sections? You were telling me the other day about your math strategy. Like in maths, you basically attempt only the arithmetic and some of the numbers and functions questions by putting on the values and some geometry which you remember, right? So what do you do in LRDI and QA? What do you do for those 2 hours or 1.5 hours?
One by one. So LRDI, for example, I'm trying to experiment on the strategies that I have advised the students and to see how well they work and whether I need to change. So obviously, if there is a strategy that doesn't work for me, I cannot advise it to the students, right? So I'm telling students, look, you do it this way and you should be able to get a 90 or a 95% in LRDI. So I'm going to test that. So for example, the strategy that I talk to students is spend about 1.5 to 2 minutes on each set. And unless you're very sure, don't attempt it. Keep moving until you find a set where like you get a surge in confidence that ye to karenge. So keep moving. Sometimes it could be the 5th set. You're leaving all the 4 sets, 2 minutes each. So now I'm going to test each of these. Is 2 minutes really enough for me to decide whether a set is, whether you understand that this set is doable or not doable? Second, if I keep moving, am I sure to get at least 2 sets which are like absolutely confident of doing? Third, I'm looking at on trying to check myself, what basis am I deciding a set is doable or not doable? For example, I try to understand complexity in terms of number of parameters and what needs to be done and what kind of risk elements are there, how many clues, how easy are the clues to understand. So this is the kind of thing that I'm testing. So 2019, I had the misfortune was, even though it's an easier LRDI paper, the easiest questions were right at the end. Maybe that's how it worked out for me. But then I struggled to implement my own strategy. So even if I make mistakes, I'm trying to see how I can advise students based on, okay, this is the kind of mistakes we should not make. But there are questions which are easy to do. 2 sets, I'm sure they will get. They were there in 17 and 18 also. Which were
definitely they were there.
They were easy sets. The biggest problem happens when you have a set that is deceptive. Sets which are obviously difficult is not a problem. You can just, click and move. Sets which are deceptively easy. There was one in 2019 about 2 girls fighting an election.
Yeah.
Looked like a quite simple set to start with. And it kind of sucks you in terms of difficulty level. So that's the kind of sets which are...
and there are some sets which have humongous amount of data, but if you just read the question, it solves itself most of the time.
Yes. And there are the third type of questions where the set itself is tough to crack, but 1 or 2 questions will come by itself. So that's the concept level this thing. See, really good people in LRD, I don't count myself among them, are people who they read a set which is practically unintelligible to others, but they make the connections in the head, right? And they are able to solve it fast. So understanding is a pain, but once they understand, they take only about 6-7 steps to solve. But that's, we don't, those people whose brains are wired differently, we don't fight with them, right? The guy who gets 260 in CAT, you meet him, you shake his hands and say, wow, and then walk away. And there's nothing you can learn from that guy. You say, every IIM has 200 seats, let such people take the first 5, I don't care.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense because, a lot of people want to score like as high as, obviously you should score as high as possible, but aiming for a 250, 65, 70 or 70+% score when the cutoff is only 60, you might end up ending up at 50, 55
Yes, it's a
going
big
forward.
risk. And why does it matter? There will always be such people. See, you go to an IIM, you will see such people. You struggle, you prepare for the whole day and take 8 books into the hall for an open book exam. This guy saunters in without studying much, without any book with him, finishes the paper in half the time and walks out and still gets an A plus. So don't bother.
It's like facing Goran Ivanisevic in Wimbledon, right?
Don't worry about them and don't try to do what they're doing. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
No coach will tell you to even try to play like Ivanisevic or Sehwag. That's not that's a natural stuff. You can't teach that stuff. So stay away. Stay away from those kind of styles. They're not easily imitable.
Okay. What do you do in maths?
Yes. Quant, again, see, quant, I have not taught quant for a long time. And I think throughout my CAT training career, I have not taught much quant. It's always been on the arithmetic side because I kind of enjoy doing arithmetic part. And I think it's also that I found a lot of good quant faculty in the algebra geometry side. So I didn't have to say, look, I can struggle and become good and then teach, but it wasn't necessary. Right? The pattern change is obvious that there's a lot of arithmetic that is coming. And that's a good thing for us. I mean, good thing for people who are not very comfortable with higher math kind of stuff. Right? And it fits with the CAT pattern of trying to get in non-engineers and trying to boost diversity in the batch and so on. Right? So for any, let's say, commerce or BBA student, arithmetic question is a much more level playing field compared to a coordinate geometry question. The second thing, which is very interesting if you look at quant chapters, is look how many variations are possible. Right? So if you look at, say, something like time and work, how many variations of questions are possible? I'm not talking about small changes. Different models.
3 or 4 max.
3 or 4. If you stretch it, maybe 10. Right? How many are possible? Yeah, I agree. Okay. Everything put together. I mean, pipes separately and efficiency losses and one working per day and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But if you look at geometry, I mean, 200 probably in terms of variations.
Geometry is a very knowledge-based thing. I mean, unlike, say, there's some amount of intuition, etc., required, but geometry is perhaps one area where the amount of knowledge or amount of familiarity with the formulas does expand your number of.
Yeah, hundreds of theorems. Even if you look at just quadrilaterals, triangles, circles, the theorems and the corollaries, the extensions are pretty painful. So it's a tough area. I mean, honestly, it's a tough area for anybody. Again, if somebody is good, then great. But so that's probably the only tough area where you'll get significant questions this time. I don't find algebra, again, the same issue. You take quadratic equations, how many models are there?
3 or 4.
Same logic. Series, again, there are patterns.
Yeah.
APGP, typically the number of models of questions or variations are not too many. So the TSD has a little more. Not as many as geometry, but definitely more than a time.
I think most of the TSD questions are manufactured by people like us, just to add.
The problem with TW is even if you want to manufacture.
Yeah, there is not a lot to consider.
When I tried, the only way to manufacture TW questions was use geometry, use solid geometry and saying that, look, I have a
cone with water falling and
very
stuff
good.
like
I have
that.
a frustrum.
Yeah, that is there. Yeah.
So a right circular cone shaped tank, which is cut in the bottom. So then you're basically putting geometry into TW. Otherwise, TW by itself, there isn't any.
Yeah.
Average is another area where there isn't too much. Averages and mixtures. Once you reach a certain level, so mixtures, replacements, put together maybe 10 models. Right? People added to a group, removed from a group. So finally, number of models are 10. But averages, good number of questions have come in the recent past. So if you look at the arithmetic, even without TSD, there might be a good number of questions. With TSD, definitely.
TSD has been just hardly 1, maybe 2. And those 2 are like really lallu, hit out of the park sort of question.
Last year were 3-4 questions. So yeah.
Yeah.
Still,
The first slot there was, I think, one, and second
okay.
slot there were three. So I think it was a
Out of
slightly
14, 3. So
yeah.
11, 14 arithmetic, 3 TSD. So there were 11 non-TSD arithmetic. So I'm saying if you are good at arithmetic, even if you're not good at TSD, there's still, about 1/3 of the questions for you to try and take a shot at. So I do that. Then I start looking for questions where I can apply fun methods. Right? Where I say, okay, this is a question, this is a functions question. I have no clue what functions, but I know numbers, I know patterns, I know substitution. And I start playing around.
Yeah, if it for a general natural number n, what will it satisfy? Okay, let's put 1, 2, 3. Let's see what happens.
Yes, let's see what happens. But of course, I can do it a little more because I'm not really bothered about the score.
Yeah.
But you can, if it's a student doing it, that's after you do the sure shot questions.
Okay.
This kind of experimentation can be done after you do the 10, 11, 12 questions, which are really sure of. Then you have a few minutes more, pick questions, and typically questions in functions and series, and play around, you'll probably get the answer.
Okay, so now let's look at the cutoff sort of requirements, etc. I mean, so usually when you see, I mean, like the trend has been that, okay, I think it held even when you had paper-based CAT, roughly it held even when you had pattern shifts and throughout, was that roughly about 50% of the paper. If you score 50% of the overall paper, you hit a 98.5 odd percentile, sometimes 99.5 also. You think that that sort of like a measure is still going to hold even with the new CAT, or like
No, I think it should hold, assuming that the assumption being that number of questions are also going to be reduced by roughly 1/3. So the key parameters here are total number of questions. For example, if I have a 2-hour paper with 150 questions,
then it becomes a Maharashtra CET question
then
paper,
of
right?
course the number changes, right?
Yeah.
So we are assuming that if they reduce the question roughly by 1/3, it should stand. It should stand. So normally we say is when you say you scored something in CAT, a certain score, it is not out of how many questions, it is out of 120 minutes or 180 minutes.
Okay.
So it is the minutes that determine how much you score.
That's true.
I don't expect the quality of questions to change much. So because of that, it is like, okay, in 120 minutes, how much can you score? Or in 180 minutes, how much can you score? Since they have reduced the time, the score will go down. So if they reduce the number of questions also, then that 50-60% mark should hold.
Okay. So let's look at some miscellaneous sort of questions which are there. I mean, so the first one is, I mean, I have gotten queries from students also, etc. Is that they don't want to take CAT this year because they are not able to. I mean, your center is about 50 kilometers away from your home, right? And you have a early morning center and you're probably going to get up at 6 in the morning and go there. How much is that going to affect this year? I mean, are there number of students which are going to go lesser or more? I mean, usually about 10 to 15 odd percent usually don't attempt the exam. They have registered for CAT, but they don't end up for the exam. Do you think that number is actually going to go up? Or
yes, I would say it will go up a little bit. It didn't happen in CLAT, but again, remember CLAT is a thing where parents says, look,
it's a graduation. I mean, you need a graduation.
Right. And the parent would say, I paid, so you bloody well get it. Whether you're prepared, ready or not ready. Unless the parent fears. But in this case, parent didn't fear and they would drive the kid in their car and somehow that way it worked out. So here, yes, people staying in their own, and a lot of things that have happened is, see, at the time of CAT registration, somebody would have put Bangalore as a center.
True.
Assuming that, okay, I'm right now working from home somewhere in Ambala, but COVID will be over by November, December, I'll come back to Bangalore.
Now he's stuck.
So that is a bigger fear. I think the 30-40 kilometers is manageable within the same city.
I have at least 2 students who basically went to their college for the final presentation, got their placements. Now they cannot come back to their hometown to take the exam. So 2 of them have already dropped out.
People stuck in different cities. I think that has been the bigger worry. I think people in the same city with a little bit of distance, they'll somehow manage. The second part is, if you're underprepared, then
obviously there is no point.
Yeah, in a normal year, you might still end up writing just for the heck of it. But here you
because your friends are also going and we'll catch a
what do
movie
you lose?
afterwards.
What do you lose? It's about half a day. Now you're worried about COVID and other things, and he says like, why? So writing just for the heck of it is become less important now, given that it's a risk. So that way. But again, remember, in 2 lakh people writing CAT, it
will average out the
top
number
50,000 who have been the competition.
That's true.
We've seen that, right? A score of 0 in different sections has sometimes given you 18, sometimes 25%.
Yes.
So which means that a lot of these people are not competition. The competition is the people who have seriously prepared. And that has always been the 40, 50,000 people. The 40, 50,000 people. So your real competition is always in the 70 percentile plus mark. I mean, you don't really have to try to get a 60 or 65 in CAT. So that doesn't matter. So it is a 70, 80, 90, 100 at different levels. That's where the competition lies. And those people will probably make it, or most of them will make it.
Okay. So the other thing which a lot of queries which people ask is, so there is like almost a 20-minute gap between the time you enter the center, sit in front of the PC, and for the test to start. So suppose your slot is at 8:30. I mean, your test slot is at 8:30. You will probably be on the PC by 8:10. Yes. What do you do in those 15-20 minutes? Because those are really, I mean, like, it can actually be painful, because I mean, you are waiting for the test to start and it will start only at 8:30, and the wait sometimes seems endless.
It does. And it happens even to people like us who've taken the test along a lot of time. So 2-3 things I look at doing. One is, once I reach the center on time, I'm not worried that I will not be allowed to write the enter and all that. Okay. Then I try to not enter. Right? Till there is time, right? So it's like, typically like what you do at airport boarding, right? What's the point of entering the plane first? You'll reach the gate, so there's no way you'll miss the flight, right?
And if you have a boarding pass, you're at security risk.
You have the boarding pass, you are right in front of the gate, sit in comfort, and if there are 180 people entering the plane, be the 175th. That's fine. So that's the kind of thing that you could do, because, okay, it's still waiting, but it's in fresh air and you're like, you can walk around a little bit kind of stuff. It's always better to enter a little late, because you're not going to miss the exam. Second thing is, once you are there, ideally, try any kind of talking with others and all will be frowned upon even before the exam starts, and you don't want to unnecessarily get into an argument with people. So what you do is you try to review the preparation of exactly what you will do step by step, and in as excruciating detail as you can, saying that, okay, instructions, then click, then RC verbal. First I will do RC, then this much time I will shift. So very detailed kind of this thing. Reading time 3 minutes, questions time this minute, that kind of stuff. So it's like a mental replay of what you're going to do, and that's kind of thing that top sportsmen also do. So the issue is they do it to a level where they can actually see themselves playing. So it's a visualization kind of a thing. So that's that helps a lot. One of the things I'm suggesting for people in the last 4 days is review in as much detail as possible your most successful marks. Only the successful mark. Do not touch the failed marks or score where you've done badly. If you're given 15 marks, there will be 3 you've done very well. Review only those 3 in as much detail as possible. Like, if possible, click through question by question and say, okay, this is how you did it. So in a way, you are saying that, look, what I did and what worked very nicely for me is what I would like to internalize as my plan for the real CAT exam. That should work.
Okay.
Now, when rough paper is given, I start making small notes. It could be meaningless notes, but at least it keeps me busy and stops me from thinking about the exam unnecessarily. Overthinking the exam is the fear. So then you this thing, but then whatever works for you. What you should not do is start speculating on the exam in those 20 minutes. You want to close your eyes and think of a movie, then do it. Replay the movie inside, but don't get into this. What if this is tough? What if that happens? What if the number of questions change? That speculation is don't get into anything that will create panic or fear at that time.
Okay. Now, these days, invigilators have been like pretty uniform, and they're pretty well informed as such. But given that you have been writing these exams through paper, pencil format, and online format, what has been your crappiest scenario with an invigilator?
Uh,
I mean, you got into a trouble with an invigilator.
Thankfully, not much on directly with me. There have been small issues. For example, before the exam start, I was, writing a few sentences on the rough paper, and they objected to it. So, but these are the times where I was able to take a stand because again, not every student can. So I told them
Yes.
very neatly, saying that, look, you are going to take this paper back anyway at the end. So, and anyway, I've not even seen the paper. So, what is it that really affects you? I think one thing that we should do is students, if they know the instructions and rules carefully, they can actually take a stand with the invigilator. Be polite, but be firm. Do not let the invigilator play around.
Because theoretically the invigilator has a lot of power over here and very little accountability. I can recount from, it did not happen with CAT, it happened with ZAT. So there was, the exam booklet very clearly said, like, even if your seat in before is unoccupied, you cannot go and sit over there. You have to sit in your current position.
Yes.
Now, and the invigilators were supposed to distribute the paper and keep a paper for that person, even if it does not come up over there. So this invigilator skipped it. And there are a couple of students who objected, saying that this is not how it is supposed to be done. So I basically had a huge fight with him, saying that you cannot do this. I mean, like, it'll mess up our system. I mean, obviously it will not, but that invigilator was like, we got into a huge fight. So I was taken out of the center and I spoke to him. And then I came back. And what happened at the essay time, when she was distributing it, she actually asked me, am I doing it right? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, so, but the invigilator theoretically has a lot of power. So what do
I
you do in
understand, but
case?
I think the key is, your conflict and negotiation strategies that we learned. The first thing is to be firm, don't back down, but don't raise voice or threaten kind of stuff. And second thing is, there is always a senior. It's like, what? Why get into a fight with a call center
That's true.
lady, right? Ask for their supervisor. Tell them, like, can you check with your supervisor? Or there's normally one TCS kind of manager out there at the center, right? So they can recheck with these people. So yeah, so a couple of times it has worked.
Yeah,
So I
that's true.
would gently remind them that it's allowed and stuff like that. There was a time when I told them that, look, would you mind not making time announcements? There was somebody who was like kept on making that 10 minutes, 15 minutes kind of stuff. I said, look, we have clocks, it disturbs, so why don't you just let it go? But I spoke on a one-on-one. I called them close and spoke one-on-one so that others don't hear, and they kind of agreed. The only fight was, I think, a couple of years back, 2018 CAT, where one student was not being allowed to have a kada, the thing that Sikh
Yeah, the
boys
Sikhs
wear.
were. Yeah.
And they wanted to get it removed. And then it was unknown student to me, but he was just in front. So I moved in and said, look, call the supervisor. Well, it was escalating into a fight. I said, look, why do you want to do that? Call the supervisor, check your rules. So that was one which was getting ugly at that time.
Okay, that's nice. Okay, so any you said, like, always there is some report of malpractice somewhere. Like, I mean, I think a couple of years ago somebody was sending photographs of the second slot and posting it online using a WhatsApp. I mean, I don't think that is going to happen, right? Or
Looks very tough to me because the only, I mean, technical thing is the manual frisking will not be done this time because people don't want to get that close to you during the COVID era. So if manual frisking is not done, then yes, there is technically a possibility of secreting something there, but there are cameras everywhere. So yeah, at least the TCS on centers
I
are
think the
fairly
TCS centers are pretty well prepared over
well
there.
equipped in that sense. Should not happen.
Okay,
And it's very
so
tough to actually, there's no time. In 40 minutes, when will you send out the questions and get back? So yeah, you might leave the paper outside, but does it actually help somebody sitting there? I don't know.
Yeah, anyways, these days papers are actually given out at the end by CAT. I mean, like within 2 weeks, they are pretty transparent about
Yes, so
giving
it's
the
no great advantage. It's just somebody can get some YouTube views by leaking the paper early, but it doesn't actually make a difference to the person sitting and writing the exam. That's the good.
last question. What about the errors? I mean, there was not error per se, but there are some symbols like pi symbol was square root or the other way around. What do you do in a scenario like that? Best guess scenario.
I think, see, one is the biggest worry is not spending too much time on that question. For most of us, there are other questions, right? As I said, it is how much you can score in a certain time frame. So if a particular question is problematic, the earlier you move away from it, that's the better.
Okay.
Right? Because look, I'm not anyway going to attempt all the questions in quant. So if I don't attempt this question, how much difference does it make? Yes, LRDI, if the entire graph is not visible well or not rendered well, yes, it does create a problem. But again, we've seen that they've come down. Errors have really come down in CAT. So yeah, but that still had last year. So it can happen. The thing is not to get too worried about it. Do understand what's the most common way of solving an error by disregarding the question. So nobody gets marks.
Or the question is everyone gets marks. I mean, nobody gets marks.
Everyone gets marks has been rare actually.
Is the same as nobody gets marks.
But everyone gets marks, meaning you'll have to give marks to people who have not attempted it also.
Yes, that's true.
If they say that I'll give marks only to those who attempted it, it's not very fair.
That's true.
But since the common practice is disregard and not give anybody marks, now what is a scenario in which you lose? You lose time. And therefore, the factoring that you have to do is, look, I think the question is wrong. So let me move as quickly as possible and not waste any more time on this particular question.
Okay.
If you feel that you can make a small assumption and mark an answer and go. Anyway, if it is counted, you get the marks. If it is not counted, you get a 0, but you're moving. The time is the bigger worry. Even minus 1/4 is not a bigger worry for me. Minus 1/3 is not a bigger worry for me. The time is a bigger worry. Okay. Because, 2 minutes lost is probably another full mark. Full 3 marks that you would have got instead of losing 1. So that's the bigger worry. So,
okay.
Cool. I don't know if I think people are a little more mature than they used to be. But there are people who tend to do stupid things a few days before CAT.
Like?
I had a student who went on the highway on his bike. That was just before the interviews. Got himself. He had to go to the interviews in a cast and bandages here and there. Oh. Right? Still made it to IMA, so good. But it's so stupid to take risks at this time. Right? So, but of course, now we have other risks coming in. So stay at home for the next 4 days. That's one. 2, don't even order Zomato, Swiggy. I'm sorry if lose a little business, but for these 4 days, let's not do it. Lay off alcohol also for these 3-4 days. See, idea is you don't want anything that will reduce your mental performance a little bit. Also, right? Even a small cold, you're not at peak performance. Anyway, now cold will be treated like even more scary. Everybody. But even in a normal year, if you have a cold, you're not performing at peak. So colds, fevers, injuries. So even fitness guys do moderate exercise for the next 2-3 days. Walking and cycling, stuff like that. Not anything really hectic, because you don't want even an ankle sprain, which kind of distracts from you. A lot of effort has gone into this exam. Why spoil it at the last day? Go play, let's say, very serious badminton or tennis and then fall, have an ankle. Don't want all that. The other part is sleep. I think a lot of young people have problems sleeping.
Especially with mobile phones.
Yes, and very irregular sleep timings. So this is a great time to do a social media detox. Right? If you don't listen to people like us telling you what to do in the last 4 hours, that's also fine. Good time to do a social media detox, right? Because there are too many people saying what if kind of stuff. Too much advice is also painful, because there are 15 different experts telling you what to do in the last 4 days.
Yeah, I mean, we did a session last week telling people that just shut up and stay away from all videos as much as possible, including videos
No,
like these.
Prime
So,
and Netflix videos are fine. Right? So I don't know what works for you, but whatever relaxes you. To me, it's always been mindless violence with high body count. So,
so Tarantino.
Tarantino kind of stuff. It's fun stuff and it chills you a little bit. But if rom-coms chills you for it, do it. But it's a good time to, just relax a little bit. As I said, don't do anything really tough in the last 3, 4 years, even in terms of preparation.
Yeah.
Reviewing your best performance is a good idea. Reviewing past CAT papers, trying to pick the easy and medium questions is a good idea. Now, the very interesting thing you could do is, why don't you call old friends and family that you haven't spoken to in a long time? Hey, this old friend of school, which I have not called for 2 years, it's a good time. No, I'm serious. I'm saying that, look, I want people to be happy. I want your spirits up in the last 4 days. I think
What
conversation
if that friend says that मेरा उधार बाकी है वापस कर?
That is true.
I mean, it works both ways with
I
friends.
know, but more likely he will say, I remember the time we climbed the water tank and had that joint and that
Yes.
kind of stuff.
So that
Good
is like,
memories kind of stuff.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean, it happens both ways with friends. I
more
mean,
like
all you're saying is try to be as detached as possible from the.
I think the most common thing between old could be, वो Goa trip या Ladakh trip plan करते थे.
It's end of the year also. So.
Vivek is that successful guy who doesn't have to plan Goa trips.
Oh, the entire world is in Goa, and in fact, Maharashtra has given special orders for people coming from Goa back to Maharashtra.
Okay.
So the beaches and the casinos in Goa are like overflowing.
Okay, right.
So
Yeah. So idea is anything that puts you in a positive frame of mind. I think that's a broad way to put it.
okay.
And the sleep matters, especially if you've got a morning slot like I do. I think it's time to try and change. You should have probably already try to change your sleep.
Yeah, actually, you should stay at that sleep.
Get used to sleeping at say 10 or 11 and getting up at a recent time, and get used to that. Plan your travel to the center very carefully, right? See, one problem with Ola and Uber is they're not always reliable in most parts of the country. So you will get worried if you don't get it in time and so on. Similarly, returning back is also a problem sometimes because there are about 400-500 people at that center, a lot of them booking cabs.
So and especially in Bombay, that there is no train service also, and it's usually on a Sunday. Train frequencies are lesser. I'm not sure what the
whatever, whether you do a shared car or carpooling or get a driver or these things, plan in advance and reach the center reasonably ahead of time. That matters a lot. Something can happen. Thankfully, way less traffic in most places right now, and Sunday morning you won't have. But check your Google Maps. Sometimes maps are not very accurate. These are small things that can, all 5 minutes, but it creates the tension in you. These things can be.
I usually suggest that don't alter your pattern. I mean, so there are some people who reach the airport like 1 hour before the flight, and there are some people who want to reach the airport like just when the gates close. So don't change the pattern. And if you're carpooling with somebody, try to pick a person who has the similar sort of a personality as you are. I mean, don't be the person who is forcing everyone to reach very early and then you get nervous because people are not
arriving.
So, and the other way around as well, because you're not completely up over there. But yeah, that is something which. Okay, cool. Chalo, guys, Rahul is in the first slot in CAT 2020. He will be giving his analysis on Career Launcher's site from 1:30 onwards, and he'll come and do an analysis with us at around 2:00 on CAT day. So guys, all the best for the CAT examination. Stay safe. Thanks, Rahul. Hope you defend your trophy.
All the best for everybody. Do well. Get into your dream colleges.
Okay, cool. Just 1 minute. And